If you're at all tuned into local politics, you may be hearing talk of redistricting. But if you're anything like me, it can all be a little bit confusing. So here's what's really going down. San Francisco's city charter, think of it like our local constitution, requires that we redo the boundaries of our 11 supervisor districts to reflect new census population data every 10 years. The idea here is that over the course of 10 years, populations throughout the various districts wane or grow, and we need to redraw the lines to make them all equal again. It's part of the principle of one person, one vote. And it's not like we're talking about subtle population variations. District 6, which encompasses neighborhoods like the Tenderloin, Soma, and Mid-Market, exceeds the ideal population, which is set at 79,500 people, by 30%, whereas District 3 has 9% fewer people than it needs. So, in layman's terms, the population spread between those two districts is 32,000 people, meaning a voter in District 6 has actually way less voting power than a voter in District 3, which isn't fair. So that's why redistricting is so important. It's also why it's so closely watched and hotly debated, because depending on how these maps are redrawn, they can impact the outcomes of future elections and who gets a seat on the Board of Supervisors, meaning who our 11 city supervisors are. Now, there's a whole conversation to be had about why the east side of San Francisco, like District 6, has seen so much more population growth than the west side. It has to do with housing policy, but that's a conversation for a different explainer. So let's get back to those maps. A task force of 9 people, 3 appointed by the mayor, 3 appointed by the supervisors, and 3 appointed by the Election Commission, has been working for months on new lines, coming up with various drawings and meeting with community stakeholders. Their goal at the highest level is to rebalance the population of each district while doing everything possible to preserve communities of interest and establish neighborhoods, while also doing everything possible to create boundaries that are compact and contiguous. It's actually a really hard job. Meanwhile, San Francisco's various political factions and interest groups have accused the task force of intentionally splitting up neighborhoods and failing to listen to community members. Last week, things hit a fever pitch when San Francisco's progressives, led by supervisors Aaron Peskin and Dean Preston, put so much pressure on the task force that the Election Commission considered the highly unusual step of removing their 3 appointees. Mayor Leonard Breed, State Senator Scott Wiener, and others said that call to remove those 3 members was a politicized threat to a nonpartisan process, and a vote ultimately wasn't taken. But the redistricting dust-up has continued. This past weekend, a 10 a.m. Saturday morning meeting ran 19 hours until past 5 a.m. the next morning, before some task force members eventually walked out in protest over the protracted voting process. And while all this is going on, there's a deadline looming, April 15th, the date the city must approve the final district map as set by the San Francisco City Charter. It's bound to be a hectic week, but the San Francisco Standard has you covered, no matter what district you're in.